every man for himself. Looking over the ledge, I didn't see anybody, but innerly, I knew something was gnawing on the other side. I could feel them. I could hear them. I could smell them. Quickly, I did a forward roll into a cartwheel, and lastly a flip in the air. Pow, pow, pow! I yelled as I pressed the trigger on my blue toy gun. Orange and blue Nerf darts shot out, shooting Mr. Bear right into the head. Ha ha ha! I beat you again, Mr. Bear. Better luck next time, I chuckled while blowing my gun like they do in the movies. I have been violent since I was really young. My parents told me stories of how I teared the wings off of butterflies and tortured most of my pets, starting with Leo the rabbit, who was just 2 months old at the time, which I strangled to death. I did not let my pets last longer than a month. It gave me pleasure to see them in pain, until my parents stopped giving me pets. Now I'm 16, but I still have the cold heart as I did before. It makes me happy when I make babies cry, or when someone gets seriously injured. Many people think I'm mentally unstable, but I think that I'm just a normal human being who wants to experience happiness. For my 15th birthday, I got a hunting gun from my uncle. My parents were skeptical at first, but they had to give in because I was so happy, and they didn't want to ruin that for me. I went out every day and hunted down small animals such as squirrels and birds. I even shot a small deer once, which was one of my happiest kills. It started from 1 or 2 kills a month to at least once every day. My parents started to notice that I was asking for more ammunition more frequently. They started to get more suspicious and also worried. My mom, a lady with short brown hair, started to get so worried that when I asked her for money to buy more ammo, she would refuse. But whenever I asked my dad, he would give in. My mom started arguing more and more often. She always told him to not give me any more money. Still, I had my own ways of making cash, such as saying I want to go to the library to buy a new book. One day I went out on my usual hunt. I went really far back into the forest, further than usual. I came across some tracks that I couldn't identify. They looked like the feet of a human being, but never in a lifetime would someone normal come this deep into the forest, or in a forest at all for that matter. I followed the tracks for about 10 minutes until they stopped right in front of a tree. I looked up but couldn't see anything except for leaves and branches. Then I inspected the tree, trying to find a way to get up. I walked around the tree until I found a low-hanging branch. Even though the branch was the lowest, I still had to jump up high to reach it. I swung my leg over until I was sitting on the branch. I looked up into the tree and climbed up further. Once I almost lost my footing because one of the small branches I stood on had snapped. I grabbed onto the branch above me before I could fall to the ground. With effort, I pulled myself up. I was in the middle of the tree. I could not see anything except for leaves, leaves, and more leaves. I heard a rustling behind me. Quickly, I looked behind me, but couldn't see anything. Must be a bird, I muttered to myself while climbing down. It was getting dark, so I decided to come back the next day to investigate further. When I stepped into the house, I was able to hear my parents arguing again. With an eye roll, I walked to my room and slammed the door and put my music all the way to drown them out. A few seconds later, there was a knock on my door. Come in, I murmured, while playing Call of Duty. In the game, I had just shot a guy in the head who was trying to sneak up behind me. My little sister, a small girl with very long blonde hair, quietly opened the door and shut it. Since our parents started arguing, my sister came in regularly because she couldn't sleep. They're talking about you again, she said softly. Mm-hmm, I murmured, trying to keep my eyes on the stream. Why do they always talk about you? My sister asked. I don't know, Stella. Go away, I said, starting to get annoyed. Why are they always so mad at you? Did something happen in school? Stella asked while playing with her bracelet. I don't know, Stella. Get out! I yelled while turning around to stare right into her eyes. She started whimpering when she got up and left. Sisters, I muttered while returning to my game. When I stood up in the morning and sluggishly walked downstairs, I found my parents and my sister in the kitchen. When I entered, everybody stopped talking and refused to make any eye contact with me. Morning, I walked in. Jacob, we are not allowing you to go out and hunt anymore. You are not to go out and kill anything, my mom said. I made a few sarcastic laughs and said in a mocking tone, I do whatever I want, whenever I want. Well, if you're not going to listen to us, we are not going to feed you anymore unless you stop, she said. I was filling with hatred and disgust. I shoved my mom aside to get to the fridge, but when I was about to pull it open, I noticed a big lock around it so that no one could get in. My mom glanced in the direction of my dad, who had not taken his eyes off of the table. I stamped out of the kitchen, grabbed my gun from under my bed, and ran into the forest. I walked outside the whole day in hopes to find something to eat, but didn't come across anything. I walked back to the tree where I had found the footprints and climbed onto it. I sat there for 2 hours wondering what I would do. I would starve, and starve, and starve until my mom gave in. Just as I was about to climb down, I heard the rustling behind me again. Without even thinking, I spun around and shot into the darkness. I heard her piercing cry and then a thump to the ground. For a while, I didn't move a muscle. After a while, I started to climb down slowly. On the bottom, I saw the person who I had shot. It was a man of color with nothing but a piece of cloth around his areas. For a while, I just stood there, looking at him. Then a thought crossed my mind. I was hungry. Really hungry. I grabbed some sticks and branches and crafted a fire. While the fire was crackling, I took out my pocket knife and slit the man up into pieces. Limb for limb, I tore and cut him apart. Then I grabbed a large branch and stabbed it right through his arm. While roasting the arm, a devilish grin spread across my face. I bit into the flesh and tasted the tenderness. It was more tender than the limb of a lamb. Once I was done, I grabbed the rest of the parts and stuffed as many in my backpack as I could. I grabbed my gun and pocket knife and started back home. I walked in the house without even saying a word to anyone and walked into my room. In my room, I found a large box under my bed, where I put all the limbs and slid the box back under my bed. Then a great thought came to my mind. I grabbed my gun and extra ammunition and stuck it into my back pocket. "Hi," I said as I walked into the family room where everyone was sitting and watching a movie. The only response I got was a grunt. I pulled out my gun from my pocket and aimed it at my mom first. Neither my parents or my sister turned around because they hadn't noticed me. With multiple pulls of the trigger, pow, 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 pow! There was a huge bloodbath in the living room. I smiled at the motionless bodies who stared right up at me with their black eyes, because I knew that I was going to eat well that night. "Is that all?" the officer, who had a pitch-black mustache, asked. "Yes," I said, looking down at an imaginary spot on the table. I had just finished telling my story to a police officer in prison.